you're going to have all kinds of adversity. This is a place where leaders get an opportunity to step up, to invent their leadership, to grab that next rung in the ladder is when adversity hits. And adversity will hit.
Welcome to Shift, an exclusive podcast by DSN. I'm your host, Blake Mallen, and this is where high-performing entrepreneurs and experts share their most powerful shifts in mindset, skill set, and strategy to help you accelerate your business and amplify your impact. I challenge you to be present, open your mind, and let the shift begin. Welcome to Shift. I'm your host, Blake Mallen, and we have an absolutely extraordinary guest on the show with us today, someone who has been shaping the direct selling industry for over 4 decades now. Growing up in Livingston, California, just outside the gates of Foster Farms, he spent his early days chopping chickens and dreaming of middle management until 1977, made a bold shift to becoming a direct selling entrepreneur. Get this, building a team of over 30,000 sales leaders before the age of 28. Phenomenal pace. 1992, his leadership earned him a spot on the cover of Success magazine, one of the top selling editions in the magazine's 100-year history at the time. He's authored multiple influential books in the category. Mach 2 with Your Hair on Fire, one of the first iconic books. How to get yourself and keep yourself motivated for life. And more recently, the 4-year career. I know we're going to dive into some of the lessons from both of those books in our conversation today, and has shared the stage with legends like Tony Robbins, John Maxwell, Les Brown, even Pitbull. His values, integrity, truth, productivity, growth, fun, and purpose have shaped his career. And I love how, above all else, he considers himself a perpetual student, learning from culture, philosophy, leadership, history, and truly believes that by unlocking the power of vision and self-motivation, we can all leave behind the chicken plants in our lives and fulfill our deepest dreams. So today we get to dive into his journey, all the philosophies, all the lessons, all the shifts along the way. Please help me welcome to the show, direct selling icon, Richard Bliss Brooke. Richard, how are you doing?
I'm good, Blake. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you. I know we've crossed paths for years and years at panel events.
Years. Yeah.
I'm excited to spend some focused time with you today. Are you out of Hawaii right now?
I am. I live on the island of Lanai.
Well, aloha. I grew up, I'm a surfer still. I grew up surfing. I'm a surfer by nature. Hawaii would be like a dream. How long have you guys been out there?
10 years, full-time 10 years. Before that, California and Idaho.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for the time today. I know you're busy, and I'm so excited about our conversation. 4 decades. That's a lot of perspective, and I'm going to try to cover as much ground for our audience, extracting that perspective as we can today. Why don't we start with your story? You know, take us back to where this began, right, over 4 decades ago. And then, Richard, maybe just one moment at any point along the way that was like one of the more emotionally high moments for you at any point in your journey. Take us there.
Well, I grew up on a big cattle ranch and row crop farm in the San Joaquin Valley of California. It's a big ag area. And if you don't go to college, you're going to end up either back on the farm, the ranch, or the dairy, or you're going to end up in food processing. And I did not go to college at all, and I didn't even do very well in high school. So I ended up working at this chicken processing plant called Foster Farms, which I actually loved. I really dug it. I was into it, and I didn't know anything about vision and self-motivation, but I had my whole future at Foster Farms mapped out. I was going to be there for 40 years. I was going to drive a company car and run the place. And 4 years into my career there, the owners hired this guy that had a master's degree in poultry husbandry.
Oh, wow.
I don't even know how does that happen? But so he came in and he changed the whole culture at Foster Farms to one about education and management. And he created a policy that you couldn't go any further in management than I already was without a 4-year degree.
Oh, wow.
And so my sponsor had been calling me, oddly enough, same guy that got me the job at the chicken plant. He left after 6 months and left me there. And he'd been calling me about this opportunity, and I wasn't interested at all. Come to this meeting, going to make a lot of money. And, he's talking about, like 3 times more money than I made full time. And he was talking about it part time. And I still blew him off because, I tell people, when people say no, it's not that it's rational, but they do oftentimes mean it. Because the way they see the world, it just doesn't make sense. What didn't make sense to me was business. I didn't know anything about business. Didn't make sense to me to go to a meeting with strangers. I hated strangers. I hated meetings. All that stuff was like weird. If he would have said, hey, come, let's cut some chickens or go hunting or go fishing or stuff, that was right up my alley. But it was out of my comfort zone. So I said, no. Until this guy named Earl Tooker changed the policy at Foster Farms. And then I just happened to go by his house one day and his hair was cut. He was in a 3-piece suit. He was celebrating his first commission check. And so I looked and I kept looking. I looked and looked and looked. And I just saw so many circles in the next 3 weeks. I was blind with circles. And it didn't make any sense to me. But one day I just said, okay, let's do this. And I dove in. And I wasn't, Blake, actually suited for this type of profession. I was not a people person, definitely not a salesperson, definitely, to ask somebody to buy something, I considered that to be none of my business. And, so I struggled. And then I kind of scored one of the huge upsides of network marketing. I mean, I think it's overlooked. I probably sponsored in 2.5 years, 40, 50, 60 people. None of them did anything. And then I sponsored this guy that did everything. And so, I tell people, say, oh, I'm not a salesperson, or I don't have time, or I don't this, I don't that, I don't have that, I can't. Well, that's okay. Just find somebody who can, right? And this guy just crushed it. And so, a year later, I go from being the most persistent. That's how they described me in the organization. He's the most persistent, beat his head against the wall guy in the whole company. To a year later, I'm like the best recruiter, the best leader, making the most money, the biggest team, all because of this one guy, which of course empowered me to find a few more. And, I don't know, 4 or 5 years later, I mean, we used to have these big readouts, right? Mine was like 2 feet high, just active sales leaders. And so I don't know, probably the greatest thing that happened to me in that early part of my career is I met a guy. He was like, I don't know, the VP of training or something. And, you have people like this in your life, in your career, Blake. I did not before. The first one, I think, is very meaningful. He's the first person that ever got to me, got to my heart, got to my spirit, got through all the layers of resistance and all the cynicism and skepticism and all the self-protection emotional mechanisms, and convinced me that if I had a dream or a vision or something I really, really wanted, that I had the ability to achieve it. And for me to think otherwise would be for me to imagine a creator that is capricious in nature and would mock my dreams by, here's a dream, here's a vision, here's, go find something you really want to do, but I'm not going to give you the ability to create it. He just really inspired me to look at the whole spiritual side of life and progress and people and success. And he's the one that inspired me to reinvent myself as a human being, because he also convinced me, okay, you show up here as a cynic, as an uneducated chicken shopper who's very persistent, but that's not who you need to be 2, 3, 4 years from now. You can be anybody you want to be. And he taught me the fundamentals of reinvention, of becoming somebody new, becoming somebody different.
Just hearing you talk about that person gave me chills, because it reminds me of my own journey and how that's the truth. It's just one person can come into your life at some point in the journey and just say the right thing at the right time, or you're in the right state, and it just lands differently, and it can change your perspective. And I love that. It's fascinating. You also said reinvention, which I love that word. And I think maybe it's a very fitting word for where we're at in the world right now. Go deeper there. So you said, he opened your mind to, you could be a different person, right? You could go after your dreams. What were some of the things that first mentor taught you that now you have seen in your own journey to be true, that allows an average person listening right now to reinvent, right? Or become something new? What would some of the lessons be?
Well, one of the first ones was fundamental, but to me, it was like I'd never heard. I was 22, 23, 24 years old. I'd never heard the term goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is a long time ago. I know people go like, wow, where did you grow up? At some weird place? No, but in the 70s, if you weren't, I don't know, involved in sales or business, or maybe you didn't. I never heard that term. We didn't use that term on the ranch or the farm. We didn't use that term in the chicken plant, although obviously there were production goals. But, he was talking to me about, okay, what do you want? And, one of the most, I know you've gone through this exercise, Blake, as so many people on this podcast have, where, you maybe just take an hour and you got a yellow pad and, write down 100 things that you'd love to have. Crazy things, whether you can afford them or not, whether you deserve them, or just write them down. Just write them down. Mm-hmm. And what that was exercising a muscle that was totally atrophied for me, right? I didn't have that muscle. I would stare at the yellow pad and go, a new fishing pole. I could get like 3 things. And, no, he said, you got to work this muscle. You got to make this muscle strong. You got to get your wanter working, and then we're going to get your getter working, because all of these things are possible to a human being. You and I can have anything we want to have. And he, of course, baked into that brilliantly 45 years ago that it wasn't getting everything. It was actually the journey. Mm-hmm. It was the progress. It was the who you become in the process of what you learn, who you meet, the experiences you have in the journey, because there is a journey in the chicken plant, but it's pretty narrow and it's pretty linear. And yeah, you might meet some people and you might have some experiences, but he opened me up to the whole world. Like, the whole world is your oyster. You can go anywhere, be anything you want to be, do anything you want to do. And, the part that I really focused on was the be. Mm-hmm. I never had a lot of big haves. I didn't even have a huge bucket list of to-dos, but I've always had a big list of to-bes. Mm-hmm. I want to be better. I want to be different. And for probably the two most ones, the low-hanging fruit for me, Blake, was confident and optimistic. Because I was raised a pessimist, a cynic, and, show me something, I'll show you how it won't work, right? And I don't know who said this a long time ago. Somebody, maybe Jim Rohn or somebody said it, right? Any idiot can figure out how it won't work, right? Take network marketing, for example. Hey, do you think we could figure out how this won't work? Oh, let's put our heads together and figure out how. We might be able to do that. But, the miracle is figure out how it will work. And then, go all in on that. And he just taught me about how to gain confidence without having to actually experience it. The whole process of, he didn't even call it vision and self-motivation back then. There was some visualizing, but it was really just fundamental goal setting and affirmations and believing in yourself. And then, of course, one of the miracles of network marketing, I believe, is you put yourself for a product and an income option. You put yourself in a community of people that are all moving in the same direction, a direction of growth, of bettering their life, of having more fun, more adventures, more abundance, oftentimes better health, depending, if that's the product. And that is such a powerful dynamic, to be amongst a group of people that are vibrating with optimism, right? Because at the chicken plant, everybody pretty much vibrated with pessimism. Like, when's the shift over? When do we get out of here, right? When have you ever been to a network marketing event, like a convention or a Super Saturday or a fireside chat or something, and the group is looking at their watch going, when do we get to go home?
Yeah, never. That's not that energy.
So that was just a miracle for me that I got addicted to personal growth, and I took it to levels that he never took it to. And that's just been my journey. And of course, along the way, I've done well financially. I've had a lot of fun. I've seen a lot of things. I've had some things. But the greatest part of my journey is who I keep becoming.
Well, Richard, I love that you just brought us to those foundational principles that are timeless. And sure, everybody can hear you say goal setting, right? And the time and age we are right now, we've all heard that term today, or the power of community, or the things you just gave. But you and I both know there's also a big difference between knowing and actually doing. And maybe 4 decades ago, people didn't know. And today we're almost the opposite problem is people hear it so much that it goes in one ear and out the other. And they may think they know, but they're not doing it, let alone being it like you're describing. So I think all of us might get a wake up call there just on going back to some of the basics for our own goals and our own environment. Now, you mentioned optimism and confidence. And I resonated with your optimism because I grew up, my dad was career law enforcement, a cop, so my he's trained. My household was Murphy's Law, like 101. Right. So I think as kids, we either become like our parents or repel from who they are. And I think that nudged me to the optimist side just because I didn't want to be the Murphy's Law guy. But confidence, like in a time today where self-doubt is probably higher than ever, imposter syndrome is like a current conversation, all the mental health stuff, like what are some pillars you've learned along the way, or you've coached, right, your communities on where someone can go build a real confidence in themselves in their direct selling journey? Any tips?
Yeah, one place I like to point people is to reflect on their life, any life where today, if I'm talking to somebody and they're feeling down, they're feeling doubtful, they're not confident, they're depressed, they're not optimistic, I can ask them, okay, well, tell me about a time when you've crushed it. Mm-hmm. Anytime in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Sports, business, community involvement. If I kind of run out of things, I ask them, do you have any children? And, almost everybody does. Are they alive? That's kind of a risky question, but most of the time they are. Are they in jail? No. Hey, that's what I call an A game accomplishment, right? Mm-hmm. You can't raise children without bringing your A game, without overcoming extraordinary obstacles and putting yourself at risk and being vulnerable and just playing full out. You can't do it. And so one of the ways we can gain confidence is we tend to have a lack of confidence when we're looking at doing something we've never done before. And that just makes sense, right? If you've never done it before, well, it's easy to create a story about, I don't know how to do it. What if I fail? What if it doesn't work, right? But, what I like to return people to is I like to ask people, what do you do for a living? I just was asking a gal this morning, coaching a gal this morning, and she said, I have a degree, and she had all these plaques behind her camera on the wall, like, 8x10 things. And I said, those look like degrees. What do you have degrees in? And she said, well, I have 5 degrees. One, and she only mentioned 2 of them. She said, chemical engineering and theology. That's pretty wide range, mm-hmm. right? So, anything you and I have done in life, we didn't know how to do. We didn't know how to ride a bike. We didn't know how to spell. We didn't know how to drive a car. We didn't know how to do our job. We didn't know how to date. We didn't know how to do anything. We learn to do everything. And all you need is a really good reason and then some guidance, right? Some counselors, some teachers, some guardrails to keep you from going off the tracks and having a wreck. And if you understand that, hey, whether you've, raised kids or you learned how to do a particular job or you excelled at sports at one time in your life, there are times in all of our lives when we have done really, really well against all odds.
Mm-hmm.
And there are times in our lives where we have learned things that for anybody that, if somebody said to me, oh, go get a degree in theology or chemical engineering, it would be easy for me to say, I'm out. I have no clue. I don't get it, any of it, right? But we can learn it if we want to. And so a route to confidence is just to go back in our lives and find the wins, because we all have them. Even if right now people are on their lips, they have wins. And so go find them. Go think about them. Go remember them. Bring them back to your state of consciousness. And right then, Blake, right? Our physical strength, our posture, our optimism changes like that based on what we're thinking about. So if you're thinking, I can't, it won't work, I don't know how, you actually will start to slump over. You'll actually physically be weak, and you'll have a tendency, confirmation bias, to think of thoughts that further that conversation. So snap out of it. Think about a time you had a big win. Notice the posture change. Notice the mood change. And now let's go with that, right? Let's nurture and foster that into a new venture with guidance. It's such a win-win system for people to gain confidence, gain traction, learn something new, and do well. It's incredible.
Well, and I love the way, Richard, you're giving us really simple things that are obviously tried and true, proven and tested, yourself and the communities you've coached and personal growth through decades. But it's stuff we can apply, like the win list. I've had peers literally tell me that they actually write it down. They write their win list in their life down. And when they're down, they go review it to get the energy, the transformation that you're describing and you're showing, right, that we can transfer to others. And this is stuff that are tools that we can all do. You've talked about kind of where we started, the chicken chopping. We've heard some of the accolades. I know there's been a lot of high moments, right, and a lot of victories and a lot of the triumphs. Can you reflect maybe on one moment, one story that was the opposite of that? Like a time anywhere in your career where it was like you were in the struggle, you maybe had doubt start to creep in or voices start to creep in, or you were in a moment where maybe you were at an inflection point, right? For your life, your trajectory, your business, your team. Take us maybe to that moment, share the story and what got you through it, or what lesson did you learn, or what can we glean from other people that maybe are feeling like they're in a season like that right now?
I'll just tell you the earliest one, probably the most profound one. So the mentor I told you about, it's just hard to describe the relationship I had with this man. I had later a similar relationship with a woman, coach, leader, confidant, guide. And this wasn't a relationship where we were friends or, we didn't text or, I only saw this guy at events that I attended. And yes, he would say something to me personally in passing or maybe a brief conversation, but I was one of hundreds of people that he touched. And so I was so dependent on his inspiration and guidance that I became, dependent. And ironically, he came to Hawaii on vacation with his wife, and she's on the beach reading a book, and he's out in the tide pools. And he was from Oklahoma. He was not a ocean guy. And you know how, Blake, one of the rules of the ocean is never turn your back on the tide. Well, he's waving to his wife. She's watching this. And he gets hit by a little rogue wave and knocked him over and hit his head and killed him.
Oh, geez.
And he's in his 40s.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in my 20s. And when I heard this news, Blake, I just kind of, I quit. That's what I did. And the physical manifestation of quitting was I got in my car and I left the city I was building in,
Mm-hmm.
and I started driving home to where I grew up home, back basically to the chicken plant.
Mm-hmm.
And about an hour into that drive, boy, don't know where it came from, but I'm sure grateful it came. I had an insight, a wake-up call, profound defining moment,
Mm-hmm.
where I noticed that my story was, well, if he's not there to guide me and coach me, I can't make it. So I quit. And the message I heard from him, from me, from outer space, from God, I don't know, was he told me, right? And I know you've been told this too. You already know everything you need to know to make 10 times as much money as you want.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to go do it, right? He told me many times, you already know what you need to know. I've already taught you everything you need to know. Just go do it. Just go do half of it. Do 20% of it. It'll blow your mind what'll happen. Just go execute, go do, go be. Quit learning, go. And of course, I was like sucking on the teat of that inspiration. So I never really let go.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, I decided, what a disgrace of the gift that he'd given me. What a dishonor of the gift he'd given me. What a low moment for me to quit. And yeah, it was sad and tragic. But for me to quit compounds all of that. And for me to live, and maybe instead of being the giant sucking sound,
Mm-hmm.
which is what a lot of us are in the presence of people that inspire and lead us, all that confidence, all that inspiration. And we kind of relegate our role to give me more, give me more, give me more. We're just, right, sucking everything, all the oxygen out of the room. How about instead of that, how about I be the oxygen in the room? He's gone. Who's going to take his place? Hundreds of people, including me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a defining moment where I changed my state of being from I'm gonna as soon as to I am.
Thank you for sharing that, number one, and being vulnerable to take yourself back there, to even in the energy you gave to us, we can tell was a very real moment in your life, a trying moment in your life. I'm sorry for your loss and having to navigate that, but thank you for sharing that with us to give us the lesson on the other side. And, maybe I'll ask you to translate that for our listeners today that maybe are relying on whoever that person is in their life, whether it's the upline or the leader or the mentor or the person they're following online or looking up to. And, maybe in their journey, it's not a wave, like a literal wave, but maybe it's some other wave. We all have mentors in our life we look up to that we think we need, that they're knocked out of the game because of a life situation or a health situation or a change in a career path or a shiny whatever the wave is that removes them. What guidance do you have for the person there that maybe right now is hearing this for the first time, that, they are depending on someone more than they really need to, and maybe they want to get to that same realization that you have, that they have what it takes? What advice would you give that person today?
Well, some of it's logical and practical, and maybe some of it's spiritual. The logical, practical part is, in order for us in network marketing and almost anything else, for us to build what we maybe dream of building, we have to step into the best and most leadership of ourselves that we can step into. We have to become the leader. Doesn't mean we can't still follow leaders. Leaders are followers, but they're also always upping their game in their own level of leadership. And that's critically important for the leadership above you that you're relying on. They need you to step up, because if you don't step up, you wear them out. Right? Because now they end up, instead of empowering you to duplicate and become like them, they're enabling you to stay small and stay weak. And so I encourage you, step up your leadership. I know you've done it in other places in your life where you felt confident, where you felt comfortable, and you also had the need or the want. You leaned in or jumped in and you led. And I encourage people to do that here. And I encourage you, if you are a leader, give people an opportunity to step into their own leadership, which requires that you give them an opportunity to fail. You got to give them an assignment, give them an opportunity, give them responsibility, give them something where you are then gone and they get to figure it out or not. That's just critically important in network marketing, because the size of a team, every leader can only influence so many people. So if you want to build a team of 50,000 people, you need 50 leaders, at least 50 leaders in that team, because you can't lead 50,000 people. You can't have that kind of impact with them. So leadership development is huge. And in that journey, you're going to have all kinds of adversity. This is a place where leaders get an opportunity to step up, to invent their leadership, to grab that next rung in the ladder, is when adversity hits. And adversity will hit. There is no beautiful, perfect journey. Blake, I remember watching you're like a bottle rocket that kept blowing up, right? This stage 1 would take you to the stratosphere, and then everything would blow up, and then stage 2, and it doesn't go like this. It goes like this. And if you stay engaged, if you stay optimistic, if you stay looking for the good and the opportunity, you start here, but you end up here. The journey may look super messy, but like on my website, I have a picture of my house at the chicken plant.
I love that.
There's bushes growing out of the windows. It's abandoned. It's not even there anymore. I took it 4 or 5 years ago. I paid $11,000 for that house. That's where I started. I look out my back door and I'm looking at 200 degrees of ocean. I could hit a 9-iron into the water. So that's point A, point B, and I'm not done yet, right? That's just, but in between, so many train wrecks, blow ups. But here's the thing you have to lean into if you're going to make it, folks. You have to see every adversity as the seed of equal or greater benefit opportunity. You have to find the gold in there. It's there all the time. So my mentor, Kurt Robb, he died at a tragic time where I felt like I needed him. Oh my gosh, how I stepped up in that moment, I don't know. But the payoffs for stepping up, they weren't tenfold. They were 1,000-fold. So every time something happens, and here's what'll happen. Your comp plan will get screwed up. Your product shipments will get screwed up. Your leaders above you will quit and they'll go and join some new thing. Your company might go out of business. All this stuff happens. This is all part of the game. And every one of them is a test. And it is a test to see, do you deserve the vision that you hold? Do you deserve the abundance that you seek? Are you willing to overcome, to figure out a way through it, over it, around it, under it, reinvent it, figure it out, whatever it is? Or do you let it get to you, right? It's not what happens to us in life. We've all heard this cliche a million times. It's how we respond. So in network marketing, somebody says no. What do you do with that? Like, do you crumble? Do you cry? Do you stop? Do you fall? Or do you learn from it? Do you see it as an opportunity to ask somebody else and ask somebody else and ask somebody else? One of the classic things, I think you know this, Blake, that knocks probably 90% of the people out of the business that could go on to have extraordinary incomes and careers in network marketing is they have a story that the more people who say no, the more likely it is the next person is going to say no, the more likely it is it's not going to work. And every network marketer that's ever made it has a different story. The more people who say no, the closer I am to a yes. I use a giant deck of cards.
That's literally a giant deck of cards.
It's a giant deck of cards. Shuffle the cards up. How many aces are in the deck?
Yep, 4.
4. We all know there's 4. Would you bet your house there's 4 as long as it's not a trick deck?
Yeah.
It's 4. A real deck, solid poker deck. You bet your house there's 4. Well, you and I know if we go ask 52 people to take a look at this, it's going to be more than 4 that say yes, but at least 4. So the more people who say no, I mean, if you're flipping cards over and they're not aces, do you get more depressed or do you get more inspired? If you're actually playing for aces for money, you get more inspired. Why? Because you know. We know. Fundamental lesson, folks. There are a certain percentage of people out there still ends up being about 10%. That they'll at least look, they'll at least try, they'll at least listen. And you don't know if they're the first one you ask or the last one you ask. And you don't know if you actually have to go, it's possible to go through 47 cards before you find an ace. It's possible. But if you understand that a certain percentage will. Now, how do we know that? I don't know. What's the current numbers, Blake? Still 300, 400, 500,000 people a week are joining some company around the world. Why? Because we have something people want. We have better health, or at least looking better, right? In most products, we have a community of like-minded people that are supportive. So if you go ask 100 people, hey, would you rather be around people that support you or would you rather be around people that detract you? Which do you prefer? Which environment feels better? I'd rather be around people that support me. So would you be attracted to a community of people that are like-minded, that were inspirational, that championed you? And so, yeah, that sounds good.
For sure.
Would you like to be around a group of people that are learning new things? Most people want to be around those kind of people. Would you like to make more money? Well, that's our job, folks, is to build relationships and ask questions and listen and share our truth and our experience so that those 1 out of 10 can see past their stigma, because they all have it. You ask 1,000 people, hey, you want to do one of those party plan things with me? You want to sell a product, and have meetings and, where, I recruit and you recruit and they recruit. You want to do one of those things? Everyone will say no. But yet, here we are. I said no. Did you say no, Blake, initially?
I said yes. But my company the company I got started in, Richard, was free. So there wasn't a whole lot to say no toward.
Well, there are a lot of people that say yes, but in this audience, right? If we had a way to track this audience, I like to have everybody assign themselves a number. How many times did you have to be asked before you said yes? I had to be asked 4 times. Everybody has a number. Some people it's 1, some people it's 10. But yet here we are. Even though we didn't want to join one of those things, here we are.
Yep.
Why? Health, wealth, community, adventure, growth. And if you keep that in mind, folks, and you keep in mind that about 1 out of 10 are going to say yes. So if you want to succeed, what you get paid for is learning from the no's, bouncing from the no's. If you succumb to the no's, the universe is saying, you don't deserve the abundance that's available here.
You know, Richard, everything you're saying is resonating deeply with me, and it's causing me to reflect, as I'm sure it is all our listeners, right, on our own journey. And I remember very distinctly where I adopted that new story on my relationship to challenge and adversity. And when I look back, I can say, just like you're describing to us, like that one mind shift changed everything when you're going through those highs and those lows. Do you think that belief comes naturally for people? Do you think that they have to learn it? If someone's sitting there going right now, okay, this all sounds great and great, like motivational, personal growth stuff, but like I still get super frustrated when I screw up, mess up, fall down, and feel like I fail. Like, how does someone, if they want to get to the other side of actually making the stuff you're saying a real operating system or a real belief system, how do we get there if we're not there yet?
Yeah, it's a great question, Blake. And it's a simple answer. It all sounds mysterious. I remember when Bob Proctor produced The Secret, I was so excited. This is like 20 years ago, the movie The Secret. So I was so excited about, these brilliant people all came together and they're finally going to explain to people how this works, right? Somebody taught me. I just learned it like I learned to cut chickens, like I learned to build fence, like I learned to irrigate, like I learned to clean a gun for hunting, like I learned anything else in life. I just learned it. Somebody taught it to me and I just learned it. It is pretty basic stuff, but you have to want to learn it and you have to have somebody available to teach it, which right now there's millions of people. So Bob Proctor produces this movie, The Secret. I watched the whole thing. I'm just like, okay. I get to the very end. Still no secret. It's still a secret.
What's the secret? Where's the answer?
What I realized was, they're not telling anybody the secret because they want them to still sign up for the course, right? Okay, I get it.
That's the truth.
But here's a piece of neuroscience. Now, neuroscience is just kind of how the brain works, right? And it also extends to the body, the psyche, our gut, our emotions, all of it. It's just kind of how we work spiritually. Just a piece. This is just a fact. It's like H2O, if you're studying chemical engineering, I don't know. I'm sure there's some facts about it. I don't know what they are. But here's a fact. To the part of us that moves mountains, that actually accomplishes extraordinary things, which we've all accomplished in our life, to this part of us, however you want to package it up, it cannot tell the difference between a real experience or truth and the same experience vividly imagined. It's the same to the part of us that moves mountains. And the simplest way I can explain this is if you go to a really good movie, don't you know consciously, and our conscious mind, folks, all it's designed to do is keep us from getting killed. Don't walk across a busy street. Don't put your hand on a hot stove. Here's the answers to the driver's test. Learn them if you want to learn how to drive. Here's how you get a job. Here's how you keep a job. Don't show up late. Check the boxes. Do what they tell you to do. Don't swear at your boss. You probably won't get fired, right? The conscious mind is really valuable. It gets us through life, but it does not produce any quantum leaps. It's just a linear get by kind of deal. The more information you feed it, the more it can do, right? It's kind of like a cheap computer. The rest of us, think about it as like AI supercomputer. It's like a million computers all wired together. It can produce miracles. That part of us cannot tell that a movie is just a movie, right? How do we know this? Well, this is maybe sexist, but if you go to the movie with your girlfriend or your wife and it's a scary movie, right? Doesn't she like grip your arm and say, oh my gosh, Blake, how come she doesn't see him? Oh, she needs to run. And what I tell Kimmy is, because the script says don't see him. We know it's fake. But this part of us doesn't know. We cry when people die in movies that aren't supposed to die.
Mm-hmm.
We're afraid when the scene is designed to make us afraid. We are inspired when the script says somebody overcame extraordinary odds. We feel how the movie asks us to feel, as though it's really happening. It's just proof positive of this little piece of neuroscience. So how do we use it? Well, you take whoever you want to be. Take whatever you want to do, wherever you want to go, whatever you want your future to look like, write about it. Write about it, gather photos about it, gather video clips about it, gather music about it, gather soundtrack, gather dialogue, what people are saying to people, and make yourself a little movie of the future. I know this sounds, to some people, hokey. But, we've all seen great examples. I just showed one yesterday. Jim Carrey, like 15 years before he made any money doing movies, wrote himself a check for $20 million.
Yep.
And carried it around in his wallet. And then, I don't know, what is it? Stupid Pet Tricks or Pet Detective, maybe? I think it was
Dumb and Dumber.
Dumb and Dumber, $20 million. And, there's a zillion, examples of that. I just watched a little video clip about Tom Brady the other day, talking about, the dreams he had and, how he just kept visualizing this and manifesting them. So that's a simple process.
Yep.
And, there's lots of books any of us can read about it. There's lots of courses you can sign up. Just like you want to learn anything else in life, you can learn about manifestation. You can learn about reinvention. You can learn about change. You can learn about how do I take my attitudes, my beliefs, my perspectives, my stories that are getting me here, and how do I change them so I can get here? There is a very specific process for doing it. I'm not saying it's easy, but anybody can do it. And all the people in the world that are manifesting change are doing it consciously or unconsciously.
I also want to use some of our time here to really capitalize on your 4 decades of perspective as a direct selling entrepreneur. And I got to ask, because 4 decades is, you've seen a lot. I'm sure you've been through a lot of, that change word we tend to stay away from when we're leading other people, right? We can call it shift. Real question. Does it feel like what's going on right now is a rate of change that feels different? Or in your experience, looking at all the different windows of change and shift, does it all kind of feel the same? I'm just curious, after watching this evolution, right, in the world as a direct selling entrepreneur, with how you're seeing where we're at right now and what it feels like for you.
I mean, it's phases, right? So we're coming out of the social media phase and we're moving into the AI phase. And they're all real and they're all significant. And they all play a huge role, and we better learn them, right? My number one mantra to all the businesses I work with is you need to have a full-time AI expert on staff, like CAIO, if that's how you would say it, Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer. It's that important, just like social media was that important. It changes some strategy. It's strategy that we have to adopt, but it doesn't change the basic game. So you and I, Blake, have been around long enough to remember, well, maybe you have not, but the first one I remember that was like, oh my gosh, how do we handle this? I don't know enough about this. How do I learn this? If I don't learn this, I'm going to get crushed. In the business was fax on demand.
Okay.
Do you know what fax on demand?
I remember. I do. And I'm actually old enough, Richard. When I got started, I was fax. I had to buy a fax machine to turn in my orders. I do recall. I got some gray hair here.
Yeah. Well, what was fax on demand? Well, you bought a list of like thousands and thousands and thousands of fax numbers, and you faxed your pitch as a flyer to all those prospects. Their machines were just blowing up with pitches from network marketing companies. And guess what? It worked. And then there was the cassette tape phase where people would buy 100,000 cassette tapes that had a story on it, and they would mail them to people by the hundreds of thousands. Crazy. It worked. Then there was VHS tapes by the hundreds of thousands, right? There's copies, of the Success from Home. People would buy 200,000 copies of that. There's social media, there's AI. It's always something. But here's what doesn't change. There's three things that you have to do to be successful in network marketing as fundamentals. And they're so easy, anybody could do them. And if we ever lose sight of those, because we're so caught up in what's new and what's changing, is we just lose sight of the fundamentals. One is you have to be an authentic, raving fan of a product. It does not work here to drive your Mercedes because you love Mercedes onto the back lot of the BMW dealership you work at and walk out and sell BMWs. You can't do that here. You either are an authentic raving fan of that product or you're not. There's just no way to fake it. There's no amount of money that can influence it. To the degree it becomes transactional, like, oh, well, I'm recommending this product because there's so much money in it. It just won't work. Not in what we do, because the core of what we do is word of mouth marketing. Still the most trusted form of marketing on the planet is word of mouth. What does that mean? Somebody I know told me I ought to try it, recommended it. And it's the authenticity of that recommendation that has the most influence. Because I know if my friend is, just doing it for transactional purposes, doesn't have much influence. But I know if they actually use the product and they love the product, which I can tell from the story. If the story is real, if it's granular, if it's emotional, if it's full of rich detail because it actually happened, it's influential. So first, we have to be an authentic raving fan of a product, whether we ever promote it or not. Two, we have to actually recommend the product to other people. I would put that as a category of sales. Now, maybe you do that on social media. Maybe you do that when people are talking about a certain problem they have and you just say, hey, have you ever tried this? Here's what it did for me. It's a recommendation. Now, maybe you want to be more overt and you want to set up a kiosk somewhere. People can do whatever they want, but it's not your product selling in network marketing that is going to build your empire. And this is where I suppose, Blake, I'm controversial. Maybe I'm old school. Call it whatever you want. But empires are built in network marketing from a product that inspires people matched with an income option that inspires people. If we're not promoting the income option, and the income option in network marketing is very precise. I know a lot of people won't agree with me and they don't want it to be this way. But this is why you and I built. Build it once, get paid forever. That's how I say it. What does that mean? That means you build it so deep and so big with such a legacy, profound product that people are buying that product forever. And the third fundamental thing that builds that empire, besides promoting the product, is we have to ask people if they're willing to look at what we're doing. We don't have to ask them to do it. We don't have to ask them to like it. We don't have to ask them to understand it. But we do have to ask them to look, whether it's at a video or, some kind of event or something that shows them, hey, if you love this product, here's what can be done with it as an income option. Three fundamental things: raving fan of the product, recommend and promote the product, recommend and promote the income option. It doesn't matter if it's the social media craze, AI craze. I think people need to stay focused on what we're doing, learn all the new strategies so that you can stay competitive and keep your edge, but don't lose your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of companies and a lot of people are losing their minds today. And they're not keeping the main thing.
Richard, I love how you keep bringing us back to the timeless principles that are true today, right? 100 years later in this channel, and they'll still be true 100 years from now in this channel as technology evolves and, shift and change and strategies adjust and all the things that we got to stay current on and want to leverage and use, right? The tools we have today that are efficient. But the things you're giving us, they are the foundation, they are the core. And if we stay, true to them, they're going to work, right, in today's environment, regardless of the journey everybody's on. And I also love you're giving us the principles, but in your storytelling, you're also giving us amazing language, like real great messaging, questions on how to articulate. So I hope all of you guys are listening and capturing all of that. I love the authenticity of your recommendation equals the influence. I mean, that alone, just full stop. Like, are we being authentic in what we are recommending today? And the influence that we have is going to start there. But I do agree with the product recommendation and the income options. And I'm a fan of the messaging. I want to be mindful of our time. I also want to leave some time at the end for you to share anything else in terms of closing thoughts. But before we get to that, can we do just like a really quick rapid fire round? I'm going to hit you with like 3 questions I asked most guests, and you can just answer in like one word or a few words. First thing that comes to mind. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. So these are just for my own fascination, Richard. So shift, right? It's not just about a shift in the world or the shift in the channel. Really, the essence behind the show is exactly what you're giving us in these answers. It's, in my experience, just like in your experience, in our journey, the right mind shift, perspective shift, belief shift at the right time can change the very trajectory of your business and your life. And you've very eloquently shared a lot of shifts throughout your answers in today's conversation. We've all, I hope, been writing down. But I just want to ask you, kind of on a professional level, your career, 4 decades, right? Everything you've accomplished. What would you say is maybe one of the most significant mind shifts that you made that allow you to create what you've created today professionally?
We make it all up anyway. So if you're going to make something up, how about make something up that inspires you, that empowers you, that motivates you, that's aligned with what you want to do? Since we make it all up, if you think about it, if you look at an anthill today versus an anthill a million years ago, same anthill. There's no difference. Anthill's an anthill. But you look at what human beings have done in however long we've been here, good and bad, right? We've just look at how we've taken our ideas and manifested them into this world that we have conquered to be the way we want it to be. Those are all stories that we made up that, oh, I want to do this. And then we make up a different story that's so important that says, I can do this. And then we make up another level of it that says, I will do this. And then the final level is, I'm doing this. And we make all that up. And we are the only living being that has ever existed on this planet that has been given the gift of creative thought. Every other being has to just follow a program. Eat, poop, procreate, protect, build the anthill, whatever they do. We get to create anything we want. And so I just learned that. I just learned to pay attention. Man, when I hear a story that's not aligned with what I want, it just jumps out at me like, hey, stop that. Make up something different. Change your story, change your life.
Beautifully put. So same question on your personal journey. So business aside, direct selling aside, what's been one of the most significant mind shifts that has allowed you to become the person you are today?
I think in our formative years, something happens. I call it the little circle.
Mm-hmm.
Something happens. Parents say something, parents do something, the world does something. When we're like prenatal, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, we're just sort of trying to figure it all out. And we don't understand why people do things. We don't understand any rationale for it. And we take it all personal.
Mm-hmm.
So if our parents kind of look at us sideways, or they blow us off, or they get divorced, or we're the firstborn and they have a secondborn, and all of a sudden we're like, who are you? I thought I was the most important thing. Now you're what? What is going on here? We tend to make up in those formative years a story that we're not enough, that we're not okay. And then we tend to play that out, or we rebel against it. Rebelling against it just looks like I'm trying to prove my whole life that I am okay, because I have the thought that I'm not. And what has given me the most peace and transformation and personal power is creating and managing a story that I keep in that childhood place, that I'm enough and I am loved and I'm good to go.
It's beautiful. And for everybody listening, you are enough, you are loved, and you are good to go, and you are okay, regardless of the story you're telling yourself right now. And thank you, Richard, for bringing us there. And the last kind of rapid fire, and then we'll kind of round out with some closing thoughts. And this is more vision, right? So one of the things I love about the partnership with DSN is it really is a platform that can reach the channel. You know, and this conversation right here, if everybody listening to this wanted to go share this conversation with everyone they're connected with in the direct selling journey, we could reach, millions and millions, if not tens of millions of people. So my question, Richard, is let's just pretend for a minute you had the superpower to snap your fingers and you could give every single distributor, entrepreneur, consultant, affiliate, whatever term we call ourselves, in every company brand, in every continent around the world, a single belief shift. What gift would you give them right now?
It's repeating something I've already said, but if you have the idea for what I would call, what Napoleon Hill called a worthy ideal. Not the crazy, weird thoughts that we have, but a worthy ambition. Like you want to be something, you want to do something, you want to have something. And it's a worthy ideal. It's not harming other people to get it. The belief that you have the ability, it's innate. It's right there. It's right in front of you. You have the ability to get it. And if you had that belief, and I propose that you can get that belief, it's just a story. There is a process for learning to convert that story into a belief, into faith, into knowing, having it be in your body, just like there's 4 aces in every deck. When you know that if you have an ambition, you have a vision, you have a thought, you have an idea, boy, I'd really love to do this. You have the ability. You may not know how. That doesn't matter. Somebody knows how. In fact, now you could just type it in, right? How do I do this? Boom. It's right there in living color and all the detail you need. The how doesn't matter. The why, yeah, that matters to you. But the yes, you can, that's the one you need to master. And you can.
So good. I love it. Well, this has already been such a insightful conversation. I don't care where you're at in your journey. If you're listening to this or watching this right now, there's more than many things that you just got from Richard in this conversation that I know are going to accelerate you on your journey, not just professionally, but personally as a human being and as a leader. I hope some of you make that win list, start working on your confidence, right? Have that in your back pocket when you want to create the energy that Richard was describing. I really hope you heard Richard's conversation on how we can redefine our own relationship with adversity, the struggle, that stuff, right? So we can use it to fuel us on who we're becoming, that journey conversation. I love the story about the wave, and, may none of us have to be put in the situation that Richard shared. for us to realize that you have what it takes. You don't need to be dependent on somebody else. You can become that leader. You have what you need to take your next step, and surround yourself with conversations like this is doing the right thing to push you in that direction. And at the end of the day, I love the visual of, hey, 52 cards in that giant deck. You go through the numbers, you're going to find the aces. And it always comes back to the core principles that Richard has been giving us along with the messaging. So Richard, it's been so much among everything we covered. Is there anything else before we round out that you have on your mind or have on your heart you want to close out with before we round out today's conversation?
I would just say, Blake, and thank you for the opportunity. I would just say that network marketing can be challenging from a story standpoint, but the actual work that results in success, any of us can do. We can do it in 15 minutes a day. In 15 minutes a day, you can get in momentum building a team. Mm-hmm. It's not hard. It's just you got to get your story straight and your mind right. And you can do that. And there's lots of guides in our profession that can help you do that. And I just don't know another place where I'll call it the common person. The common person didn't inherit. You're not starting with a couple of $1 million. You don't maybe have an Ivy League education and all those connections. You're just a common person. How do you build a wall, a financial fortress around your family? And folks, it doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you're on politically or economically. We're in for some, crazy rides in the future. There's a lot of things that can threaten your financial well-being, your personal well-being, your health, the security of your family. And one of the most important things you can do is to build that fortress. Because if you're vulnerable financially, if you're dependent financially on a job or a something, you can get hurt. Your kids can get hurt. Your family can get hurt. Your generational growth as a lineage can get stunted. And yet you could be the person. You could be the parents that build that financial fortress around your family so you have generational wealth. And we're not talking about rich, right? Could you imagine how your life would be different if you started, let's say you started at age 20 or 25 or 30, and somehow you had an extra $2,000 or $3,000 a month coming in every month, no matter what, from a totally separate source? Could you imagine how your life would be different? How your choices would be different? How your growth would be different? How your experience your peace? This is the greatest opportunity on the planet. And all you got to do is find a product you love, find a company you respect and trust, and then find it in your own heart to deserve it, to go for it, to just start flipping over cards. And every person who tells you a story about why they can't, just smile, embrace it, learn from it, and say, yes, next one, better chance of being an ace. And just keep going till you find the aces. And man, when you find the aces, I know this is something you and I share, Blake, right? When you happen to share this with somebody and they go, oh my gosh, where have you been all my life? Where's this been all my life? You saved my life with this opportunity and these products, and they actually go do something with it. You can't buy that. You can't pay for that.
Well, Richard, this has been an absolute treat. I remember being a young entrepreneur, reading Mach 2 with your hair on fire and the impact it had. You mentioned the cassette tape era. I'm pretty sure I got some Richard Bliss Brooke cassette tapes in a plastic folder somewhere. And thank you for everything you have done to lay the foundation of where our industry is at today, and for continuing to show up, right? 4+ decades, a distributor at heart, and what you're doing to constantly do the things that it takes to continue to grow the conversation, make an impact, and elevate our channel and the time away from your family, right, and your teams and all of
everything on your plate today to share all of it with us. And for everybody listening, you just got 4 decades compressed into a masterclass of highlights and insights, of lessons, right, of shifts, of actual practical systems that can move you forward. So I hope you listen to this. I hope you re-listen to this. I hope you re-listen to this enough times until you change your story, right? And the things that Richard's saying, that is your operating system. That is your default. Because I know you make that shift, it's going to allow you to go unlock some of the heights like Richard has shared and like many of our guests on this podcast. So you guys can find us on all platforms. You know where we're at, shiftpodcast.com. Listen to us in all the places. I recommend YouTube. See Richard, feel his energy, right? Watch us out there. And again, a shift is a gift. If you got something from our time today, the only reason we are here is showing up to help move you forward and elevate the frequency of our channel and the impact we're making. And you are now a part of that by sharing this show with those you know alongside you on this journey. Richard, thank you so much for your time, everything you're doing, and everything you gave us today. It's been a pleasure. And for everybody out there, until next time, let's make the shift. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Blake. Great honor.